Hello and welcome back to the Writing Retreat, your cozy podcast for all things writing related. I have a wonderful guest on today and I'm so excited. We have, let me show my board, Kris MF on today. Yay!
Oh my gosh. I am on the whiteboard.
I know,
So
you
exciting.
made it. I think this is like, I have teacher instincts now and I just like need to
They're
do
coming
whiteboard
in.
stuff. Yeah, I am addicted to the smell of expo markers, so.
Yes.
Anyway, we have Kris on today. I'm your host, speculative fiction writer, Lindy Jung, and we have a really cool topic today, some stuff to get into. So let's just go ahead and get started. Oh wait, I actually have to introduce you.
Oh
I wrote a
yeah.
whole thing.
No, that's okay.
So I'll just say my blurb and then you can correct me if anything's wrong. But Kris is a speculative fiction writer based in Canada. She's also a fellow AuthorTuber, and that's how we met. I feel like you were one of my first friends and one of my most solid friends off of the whole YouTube thing, so very
Yay.
grateful for you and Kelly for sure. You have released short fiction with Augur Magazine, and you recently signed with a literary agent, which is amazing, and you can follow Kris's journey with all of that and her amazing book, Local Heavens, which is one of the best things I read, I think last year, or just in general in my life, on her YouTube channel, so go check that out.
Thanks,
okay,
Lynn.
did I miss anything?
No,
Yeah.
you got everything. That's my whole biography.
Okay, perfect. Okay, beautiful. That's what I thought. I do my research, and also I know you.
Yes.
So, now that the introductions are out of the way, I'm so thirsty already.
Drink
I'm
that
sorry.
water.
This is
Stay hydrated.
chaotic.
You gotta stay hydrated.
Okay, so my first segment is usually like an overview of what we've been reading and writing lately. So, what have you been reading and writing lately?
I have just finished draft 4 of my book, Local Heavens. It's with my agent, and she said that it's might be the one we'll go on sub with. I don't want to jinx it. Knock on wood. So yeah, and then today I was working a little bit on my new adult fantasy book. So it's been good to like go back to fantasy, and yeah, and then I'm just like I have a lot of like sci-fi short fiction that I want to get through this month, like to write, and potentially send somewhere to like magazines. And then for what I've been reading, so yeah, a lot of F. Scott Fitzgerald's works. I think I made it through a lot of his short stories, and 2 of his novels. I am currently reading A Power Unbound by Freya Marsk, which is like, that's like my fun read. I like to have a fun read. And I'm like almost done that one. And then I borrowed from the library, I think you recommended this book to me, Chlorine by Jade Song. So I just got that. My hold just came through for that today. So I'm going to start reading that one.
Okay, yay, exciting. Yeah, I am super excited for you to read Chlorine because that one, I still like really am not sure if I loved it, but it stuck with me so much and I feel like it's done so well in a lot of areas. So I'd really be interested in hearing your opinion on that. As for me, what I've been reading lately, the last book I finished in 2023 was the JASAD HEIR by Sara, Hashem, which I can't believe I got through it. I feel so bad. It's
I know you
that,
were saying like you had some thoughts on that, right?
Oh, I did have some thoughts on it. I mean, like, I don't want to, because at the end of the day, I had fun. I liked the main character throughout. And I think the world building has some, like, interesting factors to it. And it's loosely based on, like, Egypt, but just, like, Egyptian society and culture a little bit. So that was really cool. But there's, like, a part early on, which, spoilers for the JASAD HEIR, where the main male character, one, breaks both of the female main characters' wrists during like a fight. Yeah, and then 2, shortly after, she's like screaming in pain and he punches her in the head to knock her out. And I get like the enemies to lovers type B. Okay, I get it. I subscribe to that full like toxic relationships, whatever, in fiction. And it's fiction and it's fine. But I just could not get over it. Like it was almost like funny to me because it was so
You're like
out there.
It's just like
because I read that and I was just like
it's literally one of those things where it's just like girls don't want flowers and chocolates. Girls want a guy to break her wrists and punch her in the face. It's like, oh gosh.
Literally. No, it was I mean like I understand the appeal of a certain level of like male toxicity, but it just was like a lot.
You were like
he
ooh,
was
okay.
beating her ass. Yeah. Which I don't mean to laugh at domestic violence or anything, but just like in that book, in that fun, flirty fantasy world, I was just like, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
It is interesting.
Yes. So that's, yeah. That's what I've been reading. I also picked up The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling recently. That one is like, I like horror. I really enjoy horror, obviously. I talk about it a lot. I write it. But I don't usually get like freaked out by writing, but this is a book that freaks me out with the writing. I think because it's like kind of ghosty, and ghosts just sort of freak me out, especially because I live alone.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm just like lying there in the dark.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But that's what I've been reading. And for writing, moths.
Moths! Yes. Is this the year of moths?
I think it is the year of moths. I like finished, or I'm almost finished with Act 3 out of 5. So
yeah,
we're getting there. I wrapped up another writing vlog in the series I've been doing for it yesterday. So yeah, it is the year of moths. The progress is progressing. Moths, uninteresting, everyone knows. I talked about this a little bit in the vlog that'll be coming out after I film, like next week at the time of filming. But I like had an old seed of an idea for like a dark gothic adult romantasy question mark.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the entire outline this week.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh,
those
no.
are the ideas that get you, because it's just like, I'm just thinking about this one thing. 48 hours later, it's like, anyway, so I wrote it.
It happens to the best of us. I really think it's my ADHD.
Yeah.
Because I jump from ideas so quickly. Okay, so that's what we've been reading and writing. And then next, I always do like a little tiny interview segment for my guest, which is basically just asking you questions that I've been wanting
Let's
to
get
ask.
into it.
Okay, perfect. So my first question is, what's it like returning to an older project? Because Floating House was like, it had a different identity previously. Now that you've finished an entire other book and like have signed with an agent and gone through revisions with an agent, like how has having an agent changed the way that you approach writing, both on like a craft level and a personal level? And how are you seeing this reflected in your present work?
That's such a good question. I would say sometimes I feel like I got so lucky, because my agent has genuinely made me a better writer. And I have these moments where it's just like, you hear a lot of agent horror stories because there's a lot of really bad agents out there. And sometimes I just have these moments where I'm like, this is too good to be true. Like she's very editorial, my agent. And it's not like she's like teaching me how to write, but the questions that she raises about my work makes me constantly reframe how I look at my story. It's kind of like you're staring at the same thing over and over again, and then someone says, hey, have you ever looked at it from this angle? And you're like, I have, but now I'm seeing new things. She has a very good like instinct for storytelling structure, and she's able to just like raise questions about like, you know, have you ever considered this kind of conflict, or have you ever considered moving up these plot beats? And she never like phrases it in a prescriptive way, and so it never makes it feel like I have to do this, but it's more like, I wonder what would happen if you were to go down this this rabbit hole, and where would that lead you? And like I would say like 95% of the time it leads me to a better like story. So I think the ways that my writing has changed, it's not like she never like overtakes my writing style or anything, but I think like when prior to having an agent, I was always just writing in a way that was like, this is what I want to write, this is my writing style, and I'm not thinking about publishing. I mean, you are like in a vague way, but now that you start having those conversations about submission, you start to think more about like, okay, this is like the market, and this is storytelling structure in SFF, and you start to kind of try to, I guess, balance between like, this is my writing style and this is what I want to write, and then this is sort of like what an editor might be thinking, and then where is the middle ground where I'm still happy, but it's also something that an editor won't have an excuse to like reject the manuscript. So a huge thing was like pacing, for example. Pacing changed a lot in Local Heavens from draft 1 to draft 4. So things go a lot faster, things are a lot more high stakes. Yeah, I guess I love working with my agent. We haven't started submission yet, but she's great, and I hope that every writer who wants to have an agent can one day have an agent that is like editorial and makes your books better and like actually feels like a partnership.
Okay, I have like no follow-up, so
That's okay.
But thank you for answering so well. My next question is also about like your writing process and approach to writing. You often talk about wanting to work on projects that challenge or scare you in some way. So I'm just curious, what advice would you have for writers who are looking to approach their work with a similar mindset?
I feel like whenever I say a book needs to scare me, it's because I just get bored if things feel too clean. And I think as writers, like the more that we write, the more comfortable we are in our craft. And it's just like, okay, this premise has been done so many times. What new, like, what am I bringing to it that's new? And for me, it's also just like, I need to feel like the ideas are thematically resonant and I'm like saying something that I feel passionate about saying. So with something like Local Heavens, I just had a lot of like corporate rage, and it's just like I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people, whether or not they know it, feel very, very trapped by capitalist structures. They feel very trapped in their jobs, and they start to feel very, very apathetic. When I say that I'm like a thematically driven writer and I like need to be like scared of projects, for me, like to feel like what I'm writing is a message that is important and that a reader would at the end take away like a message that I feel is like reflective of like my values. I guess I don't really have advice, but more like I have gotten questions. I think that this is related. I have gotten questions about like, how do you write more with theme? How do I think more about theme? I never know what to say to that. And I guess this is a question that I also throw back to you, because I think we're kind of similar in this way, but I never quite know what to say about it, because theme is just like something that is my starting point. And so when I don't have theme, I feel like I don't have a story.
For me, I'd say, because I had to like learn theme, that was something that didn't quite come naturally to me, but now it is a really big part of my writing. I feel like you touched on this a little bit, but tapping into something like a topic or an idea or something that's like very personal to you and that you hold opinions about, and that you have ideally like some sort of unique perspective on, and you can like tap into your own feelings and experiences regarding that topic. So you would like the capitalism and corporatization, like that's coming from, I mean, I hope this doesn't sound blasé, but like you hate your job.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
and like you've lived that.
Yeah, I think there are moments where you hate how trapped you feel.
Yes.
Yeah, by your job.
Yeah. And that's something like you've experienced, and it lit a fire under you to write themes like that. So I always am like, because this is also why when I give advice, and I don't mean to be prescriptive ever, but I really do feel like people need to write from their experience to some degree, and that's why I'll never be like self-insert characters are bad, or like writing from experience, or just things that you like. I don't know, because I was talking to someone who's like, oh, I don't like Jane Eyre because it's too much like the author just wrote about herself.
Girl!
Not to out this person, I don't think they'll ever see it, but that's like something, you know, it's not putting that person on the spot, but that's something that, an opinion that a lot of people hold, like the whole concept of the Mary Sue, which usually tends to target female authors.
True, real and true.
Like Jane Eyre is so powerful because those details are reflective of the author's lived experiences. Like, who else could write a story like that, you know? So, yeah, that kind of ties into, like, my thoughts on writing from experience and how that plays into theme. And theme is very organic. Like, it is something that, to me, you have to sort of discover, or it has to sort of, like, be
you can't force it.
Inside you already. Yeah, you can't be like, I'm going to write a story about war is bad. Like, sure, everyone and their mother has done that, but the ones that have lasted are like Tolkien, who lived through war. Vonnegut also lived through war. Like, those are the people whose anti-war stories typically, for me at least, had a lot more resonance and reality to them, like anchoring them, even though they were writing about fantastical things.
This is true.
Yeah, great answer. Follow-up question, out of curiosity, what project has intimidated or scared you the most that you've worked on?
Ooh, Local Heavens is scary. I don't know if I've already revealed the premise by the time this video goes up. Maybe not. But I mean, you know the premise of Local Heavens. It's like, why would you write that? That was really scary because of thematically, there was a lot that I wanted to say that I didn't want to mess up. I had to change my writing style to write it for reasons that you know. why. And so like
Yes.
that was very scary. And you know, like it's just like the voice of the project is like a little bit strange, I guess. So that was definitely intimidating. I think it's the most ambitious thing that I've set out to write, and I never thought that I would query it. I thought I was just gonna write it until I got bored, and then I would go back to my like very marketable fantasy works, because like sci-fi is just such a hard thing to query and it's such a hard thing to sell. So I never thought that I would query it or that I would get an agent with it. So I think from all of those factors, it was definitely a huge undertaking. But I will say that the Floating House, like it's a fantasy work, and it's challenging me in new ways, because it's one of those projects that you start when you're a younger, more immature writer, and you kind of grow with it. And this is a whole other topic that I will not open this can of worms in this podcast, but the discussions that we have had about diaspora writing about colonial trauma, that is like a topic that I've constantly had to reflect on as I've reapproached the Floating House time and time again, as I've matured so much as a writer, and as I have decided that I want to be more intentional with my thematic messaging, and I want to come from, again, a place that feels more genuine and authentic to me. And so that's like challenging in a different way, because the challenge is like, am I writing about my ancestral culture in order to be a tour guide for a white audience, or am I writing it because I have things that I want to explore about myself? And I have had to move closer and closer to the latter in order to like get more excited about the project.
No, that's incredible. I'm so excited for that direction for the Floating House. And it's interesting that like Local Heavens, it seems more like a technical and like market and genre challenge, and then the Floating House is a lot more personal. I feel like that indicates a lot of like growth as a writer too, that I don't know, you're just, you know, you're taking it on. You're taking it all on, and that's amazing.
I'm trying. Oh my gosh. Trad
you're
Pub
succeeding.
is killing me.
I am dying to read The Floating House whenever you're ready, but I
hope I can work on it this year.
Oh my gosh. I bet you will. Like, you're going on sub super soon, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to forget that I ever wrote Local Heavens.
That's the way to do it.
And go back to fantasy.
That is the way to do it.
Yay.
So exciting. So many things are going to happen this year. I can feel it.
I'm feeling it, guys. Knock on wood.
Yes,
knock on all the wood.
Knock on wood. Because I don't know about you, but like last year for me was just really, I don't know. I just feel like I'm finally a writer now. And I'm like,
oh my God, yeah.
Time to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, that covers our interview section. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I really like coming up with those. Maybe in a past life.
Those are good questions.
Thank you. I've been like watching Hot Ones intermittently, and he always has such good questions. He's so good.
I love Hot Ones.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. My pipe dream is to be on Hot Ones.
Manifesting.
They would never have me.
We need like a Hot Ones equivalent for like writers.
Ooh.
That's your new calling.
I really want to do this podcast like in person with guests at some point, like at least a couple times.
Do it. Oh my God. And you need to have, if not hot chicken wings, have like, I don't know, something that's like goofy, but like fun. Yeah.
I won't directly steal their gig, but I'll do something. And I like to cook, so I can make some like butts and hot wings. Oh yeah.
That's true.
I'll have you back once it's a possibility. Perfect. We'll make our own Hot Ones. But not to get too off topic, our topic of the day is BookTok ruining literature? Gasp. Which was suggested by Kris, so I'm very excited to hear your opinions.
Yes.
I think I kind of know what they are because we do talk very often. Yeah. I also I did research. I looked up articles and statistics and stuff. So
I took some notes. I just in a mad fury, I was like, these are all my thoughts. But I guess the first thing that I want to say about BookTok, and by the way, I'm new to the TikTok world. I only made it 4 months ago, and I was very intimidated to make it. I thought that I would feel like a grandma on there, and I did for a week, but now I'm okay, the algorithm has found me. It's all fine now. To me, BookTok seems like the thing that started out as genuinely a good thing, in the sense that you have this place where readers can directly speak to other readers. It's word of mouth, because before it's just you just had Goodreads and there's nothing going on over there, but now you have this format where there's so many different kinds of ways to talk and promote about books, and you can find super niche things. It's just I'm looking for a book where the guy breaks the love interest's wrist or something.
Stop! Oh
No,
my
like
God.
actually though, that's how people will be like book recs where blah 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 happens, and it's like, oh my God, people are really looking for like such specific things. So I like the idea of like power to the readers, you know, just because of how good the TikTok algorithm is. It just like targets very specific things. So it feels like it started in a very organic and genuine way, but then the feedback loop is the part that is now worrisome to me and to so many writers, because now it's not just BookTok is a thing that exists. It's like BookTok is a thing and the publishing industry is just like, it is the only thing. And now it's just like, it has contributed probably in a huge way to all these discussions that we're seeing around romantasy and all that.
For context, I jumped on TikTok around the same time as you. I only made travel content and then I got tired and like I left because I am a grandma.
Yeah.
In my soul, at least.
Yeah.
I am very elderly. I don't like short form content. I feel like my brain kind of fizzing.
Me too.
Yeah. Because it's just like I don't know. I do go on Instagram Reels once in a while. Like I need to stop. Yeah, I just really prefer long form content. So TikTok was not for me. But the glimpses I did see were really interesting. I think there's this like reputation that BookTok has that it's like all Colleen Hoover, all Sarah J. Maas. And no, like you said, there are very specific niches. But those things are very predominant. The thing for me is that social media focused marketing for books is not new by any means. I mean, like we're on, YouTube where for such a long time, BookTube was like king, and people were doing these massive hauls and like read-alongs. And I feel like that has almost dwindled, but also I might just not be on that side of things. But for the past couple years, very recently, we're definitely seeing like a disproportionate effect that BookTok has, because it's just with that like short form, you can just like go. Sometimes things just take off and like it doesn't make sense, but they take off. And I'm like so torn because literacy is going down. I think more younger people,
the kids can't read. Oh my God. Yeah.
I think that more younger people, especially like getting into reading, is like never a bad thing. Even if they're reading Colleen Hoover, even if they're reading stuff I would never read, I'm like, at least you're reading. And I found a couple articles that are like statistics. So here's one: 59% of 16 to 25-year-olds surveyed specifically cited BookTok as having like rekindled their love for reading. The thing is, what are they reading and what trends are being pushed through the consumption of books that BookTok promotes? And does TikTok have an agenda in itself, which it definitely does. I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but back when it first started to pop off during the pandemic.
Yes.
I hate the cutesy names for the pandemic, but yeah.
Yeah.
It was like their algorithm was outed as being explicitly racist.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like it would do, I think, facial analysis to determine what people were conventionally attractive and then promote those. Yep. It's a little bit more complicated with books, but I would imagine that certain types of books.
I do also wonder how much of that then contributes to the conventionally attractive author on BookTok.
Yes,
Writer Talk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Writer, okay.
Yeah, Author Talk, Writer Talk. See, we are grandmas. That's another thing where it's just like there are young, conventionally attractive authors on TikTok with huge platforms. Do their videos get pushed more, and like how does that then contribute to like smaller writers who are like trying to like come up and promote their books? It's just like I don't know, I don't love the TikTok avenue of promoting books. Like I think it's like as a reader space it's like great, but like as a writer it just sucks sometimes to have to get on that app and be like, hey guys, this book has these tropes. And also speaking on the tropes, how do you feel about sort of the way that, because let's be honest, the popular books that are popping off on TikTok are all because of romance. So they're either like, the Colleen Hoover romance books, or they're like the Sarah J. Maas Fourth Wing romantasy type stuff. Like if you were just to look at the BookTok popular books, it's all because of the romance tropes.
I think people being drawn to stories about romance is nothing new. It is like the biggest part of fiction, like the biggest portion of the pie. Yeah. Always has been, pretty much. I just think that boiling romance down to tropes is like a disservice almost. Because romance can be so much more. Romance can be like literary and beautiful. Love is like the most important thing in the world. I don't know. It is what makes the world go round, right? So like, I don't want to like yuck anyone's yum, but it causes a little bit of like disquiet to see these books just boiled down to tropes. in the marketing, having that be the only marketing they receive. I think what honestly, though, bothers me more is, like, not to shit on her constantly, but Alix Astor does not even talk about what her book is about.
Oh, yeah.
She just talks about herself and her success. There's a little bit of that, like, I have glimpsed a few other authors who are, like, more into promoting the author lifestyle and, like, the clout and the money they get, which is insane because you don't get money as an author. And,
unless
like, if you're
already
living a cool
rich.
lifestyle. Yep, it's if you're already
We
rich.
need to have, like, a whole other podcast about publishing and class.
Oh, it would be like 5 hours long because I would go
oh my
fucking off.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, we would eat that discussion up though.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of lost the thread of that question,
sorry.
but that's
we were
okay.
talking about the author lifestyle.
No. I mean, like, your original question, I, like, definitely didn't answer it.
Oh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Tropes are tropes. Tropes are as old as time.
Yeah,
I
they're
don't think they're
eternal.
inherently bad. I just think that when they're not utilized correctly, it does bother me. And by utilized correctly, I mean, like, you know, there's having the just one bed scene randomly for no reason, and then there's having it as, like, an actual character development moment or part of the plot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. I think for me, the idea with tropes is more that, like, I just don't like the idea of, like, writing around trope, like writing based on tropes rather than writing utilizing tropes, and then, like, yeah, just, like, the fact that it's, like, squishing in as many as possible just to, like, have them in one book. Like, I'm not saying that, like,
for the
all
marketing.
writers are doing this, but I'm just saying, like, I don't like the idea of tropes being at the forefront of book marketing. And as far as BookTok goes, it's just so much a part of it. If you're like me, and it's like, I don't think about tropes in the brainstorming process. Like, I don't think about them. They just happen when I write sometimes. But yeah, that's all I really had to say about that, because it's just, like, it stresses me out as a writer. Like, as a reader, I can see why people like it, but as a writer, it makes me feel very anxious.
I feel that, because for a while when I, like, had those thoughts, I was like, oh, I'm just jealous that other people are able to find success, because I don't even think I'm capable of maximizing the tropes in my story and then using that as a marketing focal point. Like, that's just not how I view my craft. That's just not how
fun.
Like, to me, that is disrespecting my work. It's not fun either. It's a drag. And I bet a lot of the people who do end up doing that, it's a drag for them as well. But it's frustrating because it creates this pressure for that to be the norm. And it is a feedback loop between, like, BookTok and AuthorTalk and book spaces and writer spaces, where it's like, okay, this garnered a lot of attention on the book side, so now authors have to artificially do this. And I'm just like, why can't we just live separate lives at this point?
And also, okay, like, how do you feel about, like, when you start to, like, chase trends, and we can get into whole, like, our books fast fashion and all this kind of stuff, but when publishing hyper focuses on a trend, right now it is dark academia being used so loosely, why are we never concerned with, like, oversaturation of that? Because the amount of, like, fantasy dark academia book deals I have seen announced last year, and by the way, like, they all sound great. I would be so excited to read all of them. You know, some of them that are announced are, like, my mutuals and stuff like that, and I will be buying them up. But it does make me wonder, it's just like, when you're hyper focusing on a trend because publishing says, like, or publishing thinks that, like, okay, this is what everyone wants to read right now because maybe one of them popped off, then that's where the feedback loop comes in again, because it's just like, agents are like, okay, this is what editors are buying. Editors are like, yeah, because this is what's popping off right now. To the writers, it's just like, okay, this is what I should be writing, this is what's considered marketable. But is that really a reflection of, like, what people want, just because there's, like, just because publishing has hyper focused on it and is, like, focused on buying up those books? I don't know. This is also coming from a place of, like, anxiety and bitterness when you're writing in a genre that you're told constantly does not sell. I just refuse to believe that people don't want to read, for example, character-driven science fiction. It's just that, does it not sell, or is it just not being acquired because there's this, like, refusal to buy it, and then thus not expanding readerships? It's a whole thing.
Just, like, focusing in on one point that you made, I do feel, oh my god, my brain just stopped working. But
sorry.
Like, no,
I
it's
started
just
rambling.
Like, a lot. No, it's good. I love it. That's what podcasts are for, you know? But yeah, going into, like, these trends getting like these books that follow these trends getting picked up like en masse, and that leading to reader burnout. Like, I think it absolutely does. And then it leads to like a fast industry burnout with like the trends, which I have lived, because remember when like young adult fantasy, that was like cultural, huge, especially Asian. About a year after that petered out, I tried to go on sub with mine, which was like not, you know, I regret that book. I'm glad it didn't get picked up, but like the fact that that would have been snapped up, whatever quality it was, like a year before, and then like a year later
they were like sorry, we have too many Asians.
Exactly. And that's what bothers me, is like when cultural things or like an ethnicity becomes a trend, because it really was like an Asian fantasy boom. It was wild. And now I'm like, oh, dark academia. But yeah,
the thing about dark academia, I don't want to make it sound like we need less dark academia books. Like, I would read probably like 1,000 of them. Dark academia is one of those things that's just like a lot of different stories can use that in their pitch, but like the way it's going to be executed and implemented is going to be very different between stories. But I just feel like a lot of people are like choosing academic settings because dark academia just sounds really good right now. But on the topic of like trends, like cultures being used as trends, I feel like the same thing happened in like 2020 with Black Lives Matter, and publishers were just like, we need more Black stories. And then now I keep seeing a lot of Black authors talking about like that energy is like gone now. It was like the year's 2024 and BLM is so last year. It's so 2020. And it's like, okay, so you just kind of wanted to like ride the wave kind of vibe. And I feel like that is probably even more problematic.
That one was really bad, because I've also seen a couple authors, Black authors, who were picked up around that time. Your book doesn't come out for like a year or two, maybe 3. And so by the time their book came out, they had lost marketing support.
Crazy.
They didn't get any like promotion.
Yeah,
because it wasn't trendy anymore. So they sold the book on the, not solely on the basis that they were Black and it was trendy, but it definitely was like publishers were raking those in and then not committing to give them the support later on. And so now they like might not have careers, or their books didn't sell. That is so bad. That's so bad to me, to treat an entire group, a minority group, as a trend and then abandon them when it is no longer like trending on Twitter or whatever. What do you think about the like quality of BookTok books being on the lower end? That sounds mean, but you know, I read Light Lark.
I know. You made the whole video. Oh my gosh. I mean, you know what I think about it. I think it's sad. I don't even get mad anymore when I hear about a BookTok book that just is not well written. I just get sad, genuinely, as a writer, because it just makes me think about how you labor over every single sentence and you're like, why am I doing this?
But when
also
you can, like, make AI write it.
I know. But also I think if like, obviously as a writer, you don't want to like lower your standards for yourself just because bad books get published at the time. I can be one of them. It's like, no, it doesn't ever like make me work less hard on my book. I also wonder how much of that is like publishing tight deadlines being so tight that like writers don't have the time to genuinely edit their book, and like literal first drafts are getting published. This is just my speculation, but it's like, I do wonder how many rounds of revision are actually happening at the editorial stage, because it just feels like books are being like hastily edited / not edited much at all.
I was going to interject with that. I feel like editors in TradPub are so overworked and like tasked with so much and not paid enough. That's why we had the strikes. I can't imagine that authors are getting, like, if they are at a level where they're not quite there editorially, they're not getting the support they need, just because like it's impossible at this point. And so either you have a really good editorial agent or you're editing your own book. Personally, for me, that's why I really want,
that is scary,
a strong editorial agent. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and at the end of the day, it is a miracle that any book gets finished and put out in the world. Sometimes they're going to be not the best quality.
It's like terrifying. And I guess, okay, part of this goes back to like, how much easier do you have if you're conventionally attractive? But also it's just like, one thing that I've been thinking about is like having a lot of skill sets, like designing book graphics. Because one thing that my agent told me was like, it's very good that you're an actual digital designer, because it's like you have that skill set. And it's just like, but also I shouldn't have to have that skill set. I shouldn't have had to like gotten a degree and then like had this be my professional job and then have to have like the burden of it on me, because even I'm like overwhelmed thinking about that kind of stuff, which I think then ties back into like class. If you have like a full-time job doing something else, like you'll have less time to learn the skill set to like make really nice graphics, but also you're expected to do a lot of the marketing yourself because of publishing budgets being so constrained, especially for debut writers.
Yeah, less time to learn it and also less time to freaking do it. My worst years of writing were like all 4 years I was in college because I was working to support myself. I was also like an essential worker, so there was no like stay at home for me. And it was just so, I can't imagine being like, a parent or being like anyone with an intensive, because the worst jobs I've ever worked have been minimum wage. The most like back-breaking, time-intensive, 12-hour shifts on my feet jobs have paid me next to nothing. It's just wild, the like invisible barriers to writing. Like how many great voices are we losing because of that? Because of this like intense class stratification.
I think about that all the time, about like access to like writing workshops, access to just writing circles. The only reason I feel like I've gotten where I am is because of the people around me. It's because of the other writers in my life. It's because of my family. Having like people in your life who support you either financially or emotionally or both, like
I don't know, I think it makes such a difference in the trajectory of your journey. If you have parents who are like, oh, my kid is pretty decent at writing, so I'm going to put them in shops and like give them these resources and books to read. Buying books also a huge expense, and most readers or most writers get their start as readers. There's just so many things.
That's for another podcast
That is for another podcast. We're talking about TikTok, serious business.
Actually, to go back to TikTok, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on like the lack of diversity in the BookTok books that are going viral, because like I have seen the bestseller discussions around the bestseller lists over the past like months or whatever, and it's just like we're back to that very, very white bestseller list looking type. Why has BookTok contributed to that?
You'd think because it's mostly a younger audience, and I feel like Gen Z cares a little bit more about like diversity in media and stuff. I have a couple thoughts on that. One is that BookTok is, I mean, it just reflects what people want and are reading. So I do think that, I feel like in America at least, the majority of the like reading population is still like white, middle class and up a lot of the time. I don't know, I feel like in real life I don't know that many people that read regularly and are on that like consuming book side of BookTok. That's like, you know, the big bookshelves and having like hundreds of books in your personal library. And I don't know anyone who does that in real life. I don't know if that's just a reflection of like the people around me or the social class that I inhabit or something like that. But it is a very specific type of person.
It's also, I think, like American consumerism, like the idea of like collecting, like being able to collect it and like these are my rainbow shelves. And I just think like it's actually probably not the average person. The people that I know in my life that do read a lot on like Kindles and stuff like that.
People I know in real life who read are one older to either buy used books or read on their Kindle. And
I read a lot of like library books just like through Libby.
I really want to get popping on I haven't had a library card in so long because I move so often. Anyway, sorry, got deep.
It's okay.
This always happens. I just get so distracted. Where were we? Like fast fashion.
Yeah, books is fast fashion.
Yeah. Okay, here's my note. Positive side is that the TikTok readership, as disproportionate as it seems, I do think like in the grand scheme of reading and books and stuff, it's still kind of a small slice of the pie. It just is like really vocal. And when you think about like global readership, it's probably not. Like, you know, we're still getting good books coming out and stuff. They're just not hitting it off as much. But I think there's many authors who can build careers outside of TikTok fame. I do think it's stressful for authors, especially if you're writing in a commercial genre. Like if you're outside of literary fiction, writing spec fic, then you're going to feel that pressure, especially YA writers. I think YA is unsalvageable for me at this point. I'm like, I'm never going back to that.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be in right now.
And I have seen sides of BookTok and Writer Talk that are like actually talking about craft and literature, and they're not promoting the same 3 young adult fantasy books. They're actually like having discussions and stuff. And interesting fact, according to like Nielsen demographic or statistics, YouTube still sells more books in the 14 to 25 5-year-old demo than TikTok does. It's by like a really small margin, but people are still also going to YouTube.
That is good to hear, because I have always, again, preferred the long form content. I have been frustrated by like trying to do like craft discussions on TikTok, and like those don't ever take off in the way that like just lip syncing to a TikTok sound will. So it's like you kind of have to do both, and it's just like it's really tough. I also think that BookTok should not be like it probably is not representative of readers. I just wish publishing would acknowledge that and like and there could be some kind of avenue, and again, like this is not on like editors because they're so unbelievably overworked, but like it's frustrating that traditional publishing is still so like, I guess, gatekept, and everything is so like trickle down. What is it called? Like there's so many like steps and hurdles that you have to get through. Where is the avenue for like very ambitious, especially debut stories, to like get their foot in the door? Because otherwise there's always going to be this temptation for writers to like let me write the sellout book, which to me is kind of like, how as a writer do you not feel discouraged or anxious or resentful about potentially having to like write that sellout book? And I guess like my concluding / related thought to that is, I personally think about like how do you deal with that frustration? In my mind, I don't think it's ever worth it to just like write a sellout book just to write it, because I think that will bring you down a path of just like resenting the craft itself. I think if you're gonna write a sellout book, first of all, get your bag, but you have to find something about it that you still feel very passionately about. Otherwise it's not going to be worth it. Yeah, tying back to like theme and it being personal and stuff. I think the other thing is, and this thought just occurred to me, like, do I want my main readership to be like younger people on TikTok? And the answer to that is no. Yeah, exactly. When I think about my target audience, that is not my target audience anymore, which sucks, because on the other hand, you like want your career to be sustainable. You want to like have enough popularity to be able to have editors continue to buy your books, more books, and also like hopefully make enough money to kind of support yourself in this messed up world and be compensated for your labor. The books that make millions of gajillions of dollars for their authors, I don't know, that's just not the type of book I want to be writing. So I'm trying to like keep in perspective, like, okay, who do I want to reach? At the end of the day, I don't think I'm ever going to make a ton of money off of writing, so I have to prioritize the readership, who I'm speaking to, you know, through my writing. I feel like that's been a good like frame of reference for me. Of course, all of us are going to have this thing where we want to be the famous best-selling author. Of course, like who would not want that? It does sound stressful, but I want a paycheck. I want money just like everyone else. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. For me, when I like scale it back a little, I'm just not writing for TikTok, and that's okay. Yeah, I think that's something that I had to accept, like, because I would constantly get like resentful about feeling like, why am I writing? We talk about this all the time in the group chat. We're always just like, guys, we could drop everything right now and write smutty romance. Which, by the way, this is like a side note, but like there's this meme going around about how often people in TikTok comments will like see a TikTok about a book being promoted, and the comment will always be like, how much spice is there? Are there open door or closed door scenes? And it's like, what does that mean? I think that's a valid question, as in like sex scenes. Oh, so like on page versus like fade to black? Versus fade to black, open door, and closed. It's like, door is so gross. Sorry. Open door or closed door scene. It's too real. It's nasty. And it's just like, why is that? First of all, I think that it's a fine question to ask, especially if you're on like romance TikTok. But like, it's on like every single book. I see it with my own eyes, like the like comments like this on YA books too. Oh no, you like, should not be asking that for YA. Right? Isn't that crazy? It's like, why is that the primary thought in your brain? No. Right? Yeah. Oh god, for YA, like I'm YA sex positive. I think one of the best young adult books I've seen that did like sort of on page sex was Margaret Owen's like Painted Thieves Little Devils series. But it was like a very, like their sex was so awkward. You know, it wasn't hot because it shouldn't, I don't think that sex about teenagers and minors on the page should be hot for the reader. I mean, it can be like
a sweet moment for the characters. It can still be very meaningful. It doesn't have to be so technical and like fumbling, but I don't think the point should be to like titillate the audience. That just crosses a line for me. I don't know if it's just because I like work with teenagers.
I think the fact that that even has to be said is like bizarre to me, because I thought that was like the understanding. If it's a YA book, like this is for the young adult audience. And I know people say like, oh my god, teenagers are reading worse things on AO3. Yeah, but that's AO3.
Yeah, it's
different. Like
it's
they find that on their own. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas like you as an adult writing about like 15, 16, 17-year-olds having sex with the intention to like make it seem hot for you, it's like I think you really need to examine yourself.
I think you just need to write adult at that point.
And that's the other thing, is just like, if you're gonna treat the teenagers like they're 25, why are they not just 25? Can we all just sit down and make them 25? I've never enjoyed writing young adult because I don't really know how to be honest. I don't really have exposure to many teenagers, and I've always felt like I was doing the thing where I was aging down characters that were really adult. It just didn't feel like my space at all.
I have like one young adult book that it was like, you know, the book I signed an agent with, that left me for a second, that I feel like, because I wrote it primarily as a teenager, I started writing it when I was like 10. It's kind of insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it was awful, of course, but I just kept like editing it over time. That one like feels so, and I'm so mad it didn't get picked up because I feel like that is such like a book for teenagers about teenagers. But the YA I wrote after that as an adult, even though I was just like a year into college, I was like, these characters are like 25 years old and I'm just aging them down for the sake of the YA demo.
Right?
Yeah. And not that you have to be a teenager. Honestly, even now I feel like I'm more equipped to write YA because I'm around teenagers every day. I love them. I like understand them. But I still wouldn't write a freaking sex scene about that.
Yeah. So anyways, that was like such a random like derailing thought, but I do think that like in terms of like publishing space, like I just feel like, where is the market for that? Something that's not middle grade, but that's not upper YA. Where is that lower YA, like 14-year-old sort of range?
I feel like middle grade filled that gap for a while, because for a long time, like generation, our generation, we're like the same age, like Percy Jackson and stuff, I read that until I was like 16, 17, because it first of all, the series like ages with you and the characters age with you. It just didn't feel as juvenile back then. Maybe that's like me looking back, but
no, I think I have looked back on my favorite middle grade books that I read when I was a kid, and like they hold up. Like the writing is there, the plot is there, everything's there. I don't know, middle grade is where it's at.
It really is. There was one I read that was by Suzanne Collins that no one has ever heard of. It was like, I think probably her first series. It was called Gregor the Overlander. Obsessed with it. And that was middle grade, and it's so freaking violent and intense and like so badass. But
Suzanne's crazy.
She is wild. Oh my gosh, that was such a good series. I feel like I could read it again. But like what happened to that? I mean, like, you know, no shade to middle grade now, but I feel like in general that has been aged down, and then YA has been aged up, and there's this whole middle demographic that's left.
I agree.
Oh, my other note to cap this off, if that's okay.
Yes.
TikTok as a corporation is legitimately evil. I had to like look into the camera to say that because I really needed to go in. They're so freaking, first of all, they steal your data, all this stuff, but also in terms of like their involvement in the book industry, TikTok wants to start a publishing company.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
This is not surprising.
ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, has been sending pitches to self-published romance writers for not a lot of money. They're not offering to pay them well, by the way. They want to start publishing romance through their own avenues. Jeez. And so then once that takes off, and once those books start coming off, who do you think they're going to promote? Are they going to promote the books that have come out through regular avenues or their own stuff?
Yikes.
I know.
That's terrifying.
And then once that comes in, I just feel like everything will change. Like TikTok will become useless as a book marketing tool. And it'll be so corrupt.
I wonder.
As frustrating as it is to like follow the trends and stuff, one of the moments that I really liked was when This Is How You Lose the Time War like majorly popped off for no reason.
Oh my god, yeah, the Biggest Dickless tweet.
Yes.
Like that was probably the greatest thing to happen.
That was beautiful. It was
for book marketing.
Organic. It was beautiful.
Every author is gonna dream of a Biggest Dickless in their life. Genuinely, like I have dreams of having a Biggest Dickless.
I can be your big list dick list, Kris. That'll be me. I will reactivate my Twitter just to like type
I feel
about
like there's
local
gonna be
hunts every
people
day.
who don't understand what big list dick list is.
So for context, it was on Twitter, right? It was
Yes.
a user named Bigless Dickless who randomly tweeted like, I think a picture of the cover of This Is How You Lose the Time War, which is an amazing sci-fi novella.
Amazing.
It just like took off. It became viral. It hit like the news. And
it put it
This
on
Is
the
How You Lose
bestseller
the Time
list.
War. Yeah, it became a bestseller. And it was like, this book was one that in niche circles, especially like literary spec fic circles, it was well known because it's a really gorgeous book. But it was never like bestseller. Because of Bigless Dickless, it became a bestseller. And it was like an organic moment. People just were like charmed by the Bigless Dickless of it all.
The passion.
It was, I think the tweet was like, drop everything and like read this right now or something like that.
It was like, don't look up anything about the book. Just read it. I think because it's such a short book too, because it's a novella. Yeah. I think people just like were not intimidated by it. It is like a literary sci-fi kind of vibe, but it's like written as these like letters back and forth. And it's like sapphic. Oh my God, I'm not going to describe it. Yeah. But like, it's very
the kind
good.
of book that I never would have imagined taking off like that, but it absolutely like deserves it, you know?
It deserves it. And it only happened because there was just like one random person on Twitter who, by the way, they're like a stan account for some really obscure anime.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And I think so. And they were just like, just very organically was promoting passionately a book that they enjoyed. And I think every writer like just dreams
they
of
really
that.
felt that, you know? It just was one reader who was able to make that take off. I feel like some of the energy I get from TikTok emulates that a little bit. Like it is readers being like, I love this book, you should read it. That's just, you know, the best parts of book circles are that. And I think this TikTok publishing endeavor is going to just completely eradicate that and make it not possible, at least on TikTok, which sucks. And already you get a lot of like compromised, not ethics, but compromised interests because big creators will be paid or sent books and asked to promote them.
True,
whether they like them or
PR,
not. Yeah, I just think that the organic love that Bigless Dickless felt, that's like fading. It's a thing of the past. That's why it was so cool that
it's
happened.
a thing of the past.
What was the last book that made you feel as passionate as that?
Oh my God, wait, let me think about that.
I need to like look at my story graph for real.
Wow, wait, let me check because I cannot. When was the last time I felt something?
I know, literally.
You know what? Okay, wait, this is probably not the last book that this happened, but Song of Achilles, I did enjoy when I read it a couple years ago. Like, I thought for what it was very solid, and it gave me a bit of a book hangover because I was like, oh, I want to read something really epic and romantic. And then I just like couldn't find one for a while. So that was like one BookTok book that I was like, I actually did enjoy, and I felt like that one was really organic too because that book originally was published in like 2008. Yeah, so I mean, it was just it's been out for so long, and it like changed Madeline Miller's life because it like allowed her to like be able to write more books and to like work from home and whatever.
For me,
literally going into my Goodreads like, what the frick?
Yeah, I really, really liked Starling House. I thought it was very excellent.
Heard of that one.
It's really good, but I just don't feel like I'm passionate about it. I get passionate for like the underdog. So an anthology I read recently, Never Whistle at Night, which is Indigenous dark fiction. Even though like I saw more flaws in it than Starling House, I promote that more passionately in like my everyday life. Like I tell people to read it because no one has heard of it. But it was really good. Like, oh my God, whoever did the introduction popped off. It was actually insane. But like, yeah, Rebecca Roanhorse contributed. Oh, Tommy Orange, Darcy Little Badger, like all these amazing authors contributed to this anthology, and it was like just really cool.
I'm trying to think of like, what is a book from an Indigenous writer that's like really, really popped off in terms of bestseller lists? Or
Rebecca Roanhorse. I think Black Sun did really well.
Oh yeah.
I actually preferred her first series, Trail of Lightning, and the accompanying, like the sequel, where they're just like a really good fun time. And I feel like people talk about those less than Black Sun. Yeah. I think in literary fiction, like Tommy Orange has had stuff.
Yeah, I guess they exist. It's just you have to be kind of like dialed in.
Yeah, that's the thing. It shouldn't be like a niche that you're looking for. It should be like part of the bigger conversation. Especially because so many people are so down to like appropriate Indigenous culture and history. And with the fact that like anti-colonial fiction has become like kind of a trend.
Oh my God, dude.
When like most
it is a
people
trend.
writing
Isn't that crazy?
It's so it's messed up, and also like most people writing it are colonizers. So it's a little bit, and
that's the tea.
I say this as I would consider myself a fucking colonizer, you know, because I'm in America. I'm living on stolen land. Yeah. It's a little bit different, I guess, but
I've like, I don't know. I think like I've had a lot of thoughts about that recently. I think it's just like with the way, like with everything that's happening in like Palestine, and then the response that the Canadian government has had, it's just like, I like hate this country. Like I actually hate it.
Oh, tell me about it.
Like I have any shred of like, I would never consider myself like patriotic, but like any shred of respect that I like had for like our institutions is just like completely eradicated.
So any more thoughts on BookTok? I think we've pretty much covered like at least on my list.
We covered everything on my list.
So the last thing, if we can get through it without the Wi-Fi breaking, is writing woes. I have 4 here for you. They're the last of my batch. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, this is number 24 from Esmeralda. I'm what you would call a perfectionist procrastinator. I tend to want to write, but I have to make sure I have everything in order before I do, but then I just end up not writing. I used to be a pantser in my younger years, but then discovered plotting and could not go back. Sorry, now I'm just stuck, really. How do I fix this?
By perfectionist, is it like I need to know everything?
Yeah, like having everything
or is it like
planned out. I actually got a lot of this, like how do I start to write? Like I've done the outline, how do I start writing the book? And I'm so sorry, I don't know how to answer that. You just sit down and you start, you write chapter 1 and then you go from there.
You can interpret the question 2 ways. I guess it's like I'm struggling to like put the words on the page, and like I can't move on until I'm happy and satisfied with the sentence in order to move on to the next sentence. Or there's like, I don't have all the plot beats planned out, and I need to have them planned out, or otherwise I can't write. So I think if for the first thing, I'm struggling to put words on the page, I start every writing session reading. I pick up a book that is the writing style that I like, that I think is like close to kind of what I'm trying to do in the project. I try to read writing where it's just like the language itself is so good that it inspires me to write. And if you don't yet have an author that makes you feel that way, I would just like encourage you to find one, because for me it's like when I read a sentence that is so banging, I'm just like, I need to feel this feeling for myself, and it makes me way more motivated to write. The other thing that I would say is that like part of that feeling comes from feeling like you're imagining someone else reading that sentence, like you're already thinking about like a phantom audience. But when you're writing, until the moment you choose to send your story to someone else, it's just you and the page. That is it. You're just talking to yourself. I think it takes a lot of practice, but I personally feel like after years and years and years, I've gotten to a point where it's like, I just put the shitty words down and I just move on. Yeah. Because it is going to get better in revision. And I think a lot of new writers haven't gotten used to revision yet. So they think what is on the page is the story. It's not. By draft 3, you're going to have a different book. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. And then I would also, not to like plug my own YouTube channel, but if you've never tried like a dialogue first method or a non-linear writing method to your scenes, try it. I have like a whole video on this where I like choreograph a scene non-linearly. I can't explain it, but like there's a whole other video if you just search my channel, like non-linear writing, whatever. It just takes off the pressure of like feeling like you're writing prose, and it just makes you feel like, okay, let me just like visualize and choreograph the scene and fill in the blanks. Yeah, no, those are great tips. I didn't know how to answer the question, so that's perfect. I think there's a lot of different things you can try to like get started or continue on. Yeah. Like a lot of those blockages, like writer's block, is just psychological. It's not an actual block, you just get past it, which I know easier said than done, but yeah. Okay. You can do it. You'll always get through it. Yeah, you will. So anyways, we're back and nothing bad happened. Yeah, nothing
bad and traumatic happened at all. So we had a question. I'm going to read it again just to have that. And it's the woe of finding the right way / words to describe a situation. For example, when I'm writing a romantic scene, I'd usually like it to come off as charming, flirty, and peaceful, while also giving the reader good imagery with environment and expression, descriptions, etc. But sometimes all those things I want to convey jumble together in my brain and make a huge mess. Then the writing just seems unnatural, stiff, and overdone. And when rereading it later, it doesn't at all give me the picture I was hoping it would. I hope this makes sense. It sounds like there's focus problems as well. I do think this is one of the things I was talking about in my last podcast about aphantasia. It's that imagery can be distracting, and it's not always the priority of a scene.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So that kind of plays into it, yeah. But yeah, any thoughts before?
Yeah, that's interesting. I agree that it can be sometimes not the best thing to be super visual, because then you're just like, you get caught up in description. When I think about scene construction, I guess it's a little bit unconscious, but also like it helps to maybe think about it consciously. What is your internal and external conflict? Like what sort of, like, so I guess in the context of this, it would be a romantic scene, but it's like it's a little hard because it's just like vague. Like right now it's just like I want it to feel romantic, but it's like you have to go a little bit, I would have to know a little bit more about the characters, because in order for something to like feel romantic, I think it has to be tethered to something internal about the character. Because if you're trying to deepen a relationship, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And I think a lot of the time when you're advancing a romantic beat, it is tied to like the characters' vulnerability with each other. So what is like an aspect of the characters that they are revealing to each other in that moment? And so I would think about it less as like, I want it to feel romantic and charming, and instead, what would this character find charming about the other character? I don't know. I'm trying to think of like romantic scenes, and whenever I write them, it always comes down to like a sense of vulnerability. And then in terms of layering in description, I guess sometimes in these romantic scenes, you're not necessarily moving forward the external plot, so maybe you can like disregard that. But if we're just focusing in on the characters, I would just kind of refocus it to think about your characters' internal conflicts, like who they are, what are they insecure about, what kind of issues are they contending with, why are they bonding with this person in this particular moment.
Yeah, that's really apt, is to like maybe reshift your focus to the conflict, which is what will drive any scene forward and hopefully make it seem a little less overdone. It also seems like you're trying to throw everything into the kitchen sink with this. Not you, but the person speaking, Mr. or Miss or whoever, PP. Because if you're trying to do too much at once, I feel like you lose what you want to focus on. So in the case of a romantic scene, I don't really care about the imagery. Maybe like one beat to establish a sense of place, but you should be focusing more on the dialogue, on the feelings that your POV character is feeling. And like the internal conflict of that moment as they're ideally being like vulnerable to each other. It's more of like an internal thing than the imagery part of it.
Like if you are using description, it should just be to like enhance a moment here and there. Like especially if like someone has just said something that you want the reader to bask in that, then there might be something about the environment that like if you're in the perspective of someone who's like literally falling in love in the moment, there is something about the environment that's going to shift around them as a result of whatever this other character has said or how this other character is looking at them.
Just kind of parsing back the amount of things that you're describing or including in a scene and trying to figure out what points matter. So is it like the internal conflict or the imagery or the emotions? Like, I don't know, just pare back, like be a little more minimalist even. Man, it's hard giving like writing advice without seeing the stuff.
Seeing the actual work. Yeah. Because you're like, tell me everything about your character.
Like tell me the whole backstory right now. Like
I do think good like blanket advice is just like, what is an example of something similar to this that you've read in a book that you like, and why is that scene? And analyze the reasons why that scene is working for you.
Analyze the things you write, really think about, like read consciously. I think there's a lot of people who are big readers and they're not like really stopping to consider the mechanics of a scene, which you don't have to. You can just enjoy a book. But if you want to write and
if you're a writer, it helps.
It's a good skill to develop for sure. Yes. Number 26, almost there, is from Alice. Their woe is just trying to write well in school. I did a whole video on this. I really don't know how I did it. I have not finished a book in so long, so honestly, I preach this advice a lot. I'm not good at it, but it's time management and also finding stuff you actually want to write, because writing has to be your escape while you're in school. Otherwise, if it's a chore, if it's another job, you're going to be miserable because you're just working constantly. You know, you're either studying or writing.
Yes.
Or I guess if you have a social life, unlike some people, then hanging out with friends. But yeah, writing has to be like enjoyable for you at that stage in your life. You can worry about the career stuff later. Now is not the time, unless you're like literally studying writing.
I agree.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to make it a career, honestly. Maybe like toward the tail end, because I feel like my load lightened a lot. But being agented, I got agented like a month into my first year of college, and it was...
You're so young.
I started college at like 21, though.
That's still young.
Yeah.
Like getting an agent at 21.
20. Yeah. Yeah, it was a long time ago. But
yeah,
I feel like it really like... It made me so stressed out because I was like, oh, I have to write the next book and like it has to be ready to go on sub and it has to be with the market and I have to like promote myself. It like is not fun. I don't think the myth of the young wonderkind writer is worth that. I had like no friends. No one fucking liked me. Like all I did was sit in my room and write. No, I missed so much of my 20s. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. Just be in school.
I was just gonna say that I'll be honest with you. I can't answer this question because in school, I did not write. I wrote a lot as a kid. I wrote a lot in high school. As soon as I got to university, I wrote short stories here and there, like a couple short stories a year, but I was just very focused on getting through my degree. And then the other thing I will say, and I know that not everyone has the privilege of doing this, but in my third year, I had 2 writing workshops. So that forced me to write and that got me back into it. But I was in my third year. I was like almost done. If you can take a writing elective and have it be a part of school in that way, then it's a good environment to be in, but you absolutely don't need to do that. And I guess this is not what this person wants to hear, but like I wouldn't focus too much on like, I need to write every day. I need to accomplish all of these things by the end of this year. I think if you can just produce work, even if it's unfinished, that like truly feels like it's coming like as a passion project, you're gonna have time after you graduate. Like I got so much more time after I left school, and now I just work a full-time job, and yes, it's 40 hours a week, but it's like it's 9 to 5, and when it's done, it's done. Yeah. It's not like I'm going to class and then studying and then, you know, having these exams. As long as you just love writing, like, and you know you're always gonna go back to it, I feel like you're already on the right track. But yeah, I also we talk a lot about like people getting their book deals in college and stuff like that, and it's just like good for you if you can swing it, but... I'm so impressed and awed. I'm just like, when do you sleep? But I know that for me, like personally, I don't really like the things that I was writing when I was at that age. So you don't need to rush. You're gonna write really good stuff like 4 years from now. Yeah. And like if you treat it as a time where you can, you know, explore your craft and grow as a writer, then you're going to be even better by the time you come out and you're like ready to tackle it. But let me tell you, like when you're writing with professional, like, you know, writing professionally, traditional publishing in mind, like it takes a really specific lifestyle and personality type to swing that much writing that intensely while you are also still in school. Like it really is different from a 9-to-5 job. Honestly, most of the 9-to-5 jobs I've worked have required very little brain power. Even teaching is like a lot of work, but my current teaching job is so not real. But it just requires so much less brain power than school, because school, I was trying to commit things to memory. I was like stressed about exams. There was just so much to juggle because I was also doing like extracurriculars and part-time jobs. It just takes, one, you basically can't, if you want to take writing very seriously while you're still in college, you basically can't have anything else going on. Like imagine trying to hit those crunch time deadlines for traditional publishing and you have a midterm on like Wednesday. No. I don't know. I think like if you're just like seeing people on social media that seem like they're doing it really, really well, even if they are, I mean, it's just like everyone is different.
Yeah.
And like social media is fake. And yeah.
They're probably
it's not
breaking down.
It's not always glamorous.
Inside. That's how I was. I was breaking down constantly. I was so stressed. And being like on submission.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Being on sub, that sounds like the worst thing ever. Like people who think like I want to rush to get agented, like don't.
Yeah, take your time.
It changes the way that you look at your book, and sometimes you're just not ready for it personally.
Yeah. It was like wild too, because I had it in my head that like I would get money from selling a book and I'd be able to like support myself a little and like work less. And then by the end of my, like by the time I graduated, I was working even more because I hadn't sold anything. So
that's like, oh my God, trad pop.
Yeah, I feel like that was really traumatic.
That's a traumatic thing to go through, especially at that age.
Oh yeah.
Because even at my big old age, it's like I constantly tell myself, I'm like, okay, I can't wait to die on sub. Even confronting that thought is like very hard as like a fully grown adult who's been like prepared for it for years and is like prepared to write a whole nother book, like if and when that happens. And it's like still like heartbreaking. And so like to go through that at like 21 is just like, I think I would have quit. But you're still here and you're an inspiration.
Yeah, writing while in college. Don't take it too seriously. Just enjoy and have fun with your life. I'm coming toward the tail end of my 20s and I'm happy with my life, you know, don't get me wrong. I did a lot of fun stuff, obviously, in my 20s. I feel like me being in Thailand is testament to that. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do that stuff, but there's stuff I missed out on, you know, because of writing. Yeah. And like, yeah, sometimes if you want to be serious, you have to make that sacrifice. But if you're 21, 22, you don't have to make those sacrifices yet. You have time. Okay, number 27 is the last one. It's from Nate. And it's just too many ideas and scared to be tied down to one. I also lose motivation after hitting a roadblock when drafting.
I have a few thoughts on that. I think a lot of writers are like, they just get inundated by ideas and like having to decide, okay, which one is actually worth pursuing. Some ideas can't hold their weight as a book. I think a book is usually, for me, a culmination of just a lot of ideas that I've collected, a lot of thoughts that I have over the course of like years or weeks or months, whatever. Some ideas would make a better short story, honestly. So when I'm sitting down, I'm thinking about like, again, I go back to theme. Like, it's just like, okay, this is the one idea. How do you make a whole plot out of it? And I take the time to like truly try to reflect on that to see if it would actually like hold its weight as a book. And sometimes like being able to just write it as a short story or start writing it as a short story takes off that burden of being like, now I'm going to commit 6 months to drafting a book, right? And then did they say they're struggling with getting stuck in the plot?
Roadblock when drafting.
That's vague, but if it's a plotting issue, I don't know if this person has tried some kind of outlining or beat sheet. If not like outlining, then I always think like a beat sheet is something that you can do fairly quickly, just to be like, act 1, these are the things I'm setting up. By the midpoint, this is what's happening. This is the climax. And then this is how I want it to end. Even if you completely derail from that at some point, at least you take away that pressure while you're drafting of like, I don't know what happens next. But I'm coming from an outliner perspective, so maybe you have a different perspective. I don't know. Yeah, roadblock while drafting is vague. I do hit that a lot, and then usually it means that there's like an issue in what I've already written. Yeah. And there's like a foundational issue because all of my writing, my stories tend to be very like one thing leads into the next, like conflict, consequence, the 3 C's, as I've also talked about on my channel. Sometimes looking back is helpful. Obviously you can't do that too much because it gets very distracting and like can become a roadblock in and of itself. Just like losing motivation though, like maybe that means you're picking the wrong thing to tie it back into having too many ideas. Maybe it means your idea isn't like developed enough by the time you set out drafting. I don't know. There's like a lot of different things you can explore. I do think your tip about writing, like funneling ideas into short fiction is really good because you get that practice and you get that catharsis and you get to see if the idea is worth exploring in longer form. Yeah. And you get to an ending, you get the sense of accomplishment.
Yes. you can like revise too, so that's always good. I think people really need to like learn to revise. Oh, you okay?
Revising is amazing, you guys. I'm learning this year.
Yes, revising is the best.
Yeah, on the note
I
of
freaking
short
love it.
fiction, just because you explore something in a short story, it doesn't mean you explore it and then you're done. You'll either feel like, okay, I got it out of my system and now I'm bored by it, or, and this happened with Local Heavens, I wrote a short story, the one that was published with Augur Magazine. I really loved the character that I created for that story, and I loved the technology that I developed, and I knew that there was so much left to write about, and then I went and I wrote Local Heavens.
And we
So,
love it.
like,
We love that.
Yeah, I think it's just like, don't feel like you have to be like tied down to a book, because a book is a months long commitment. A short story, you can do in like a week or a month.
Exactly. For books too, because I'm a chronic like idea jumper. Sometimes I'll start a book and then like leave it and move on to the next thing, and I'll loop back around to it once I'm like ready. Sometimes you need to start writing a book to see if it's like worth pursuing, and you get to a certain point and you're just like not ready yet, and you can move on to another project. And like, I don't know, there's no rules, like, there's good practice to follow if you want to be like productive and like publish books professionally and have one out every year, but there's no like formula that'll make you into like the best-selling author or whatever, or like the most productive perfect writer. Like, so much of art is gonna boil down to instinct, but a lot of writers get like wrapped up in the technicality of it.
I also don't think idea hopping is like a bad thing. Like,
I don't think so either. It means you're
it's
inspired.
fine if you don't finish the book. You'll finish a book eventually.
Yeah, I do agree that ideas are cheap. You do have to have a finished story to like get anywhere. You can't just make a career off of ideas alone, but it's fine to explore your different ideas and do whatever you have to figure out which book you want to commit to for the next couple months to couple years. I don't know. I'm not a successful writer, so maybe my advice is like
It's like, we're just talking out our ass.
Oh, I'm such like, when I teach, I'm such a hippie. I like don't enforce rules. I just like let kids get away with shoddy work.
Those were the best teachers, the ones that never... I went to a school that you had to have uniforms, so it was like the teachers that like did not care if you were wearing a hoodie over your uniform. Those are the teachers that I remember forever.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully I'm that and not just like a total pushover. Unless you have anything to add, that was our last segment and our last question. So I'll be opening up the Writing Woes form again soon if you guys are interested. So we'll be going into the next batch in the next episode of this podcast. Final words, plugs. I will include all of Kris's information in the description box, so you can follow her on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. Should I include that?
Yeah, sure. Even though we just like spent the whole podcast being like, TikTok. But I am on there.
Still gotta get your bag, regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the rat race. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any final words, but this was very fun. Thank you for having me. Please invite me again.
Of course. We should do like a triad. I almost said three-way, but round table with you, me, and Kelly. That'd be really fun.
Oh yeah, the whole gang.
Oh my god, what if we did it in person? The ideas are flowing. I'm literally going to like...
We gotta do it.
I want to cook for you guys. Oh my god. I'm like...
Okay, we have to make it happen. I'll go... I'll go wherever.
Yeah, okay. We could also like... I feel like a trip would be fun. But yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Sorry for the technological issues.
It's fine. It never happened.
We figured it out, so it is totally fine. It did never happen.
Yeah.
It's not real. Technology isn't real. But thank you so much, and that was really fun. And I will have you on again, for sure.
Yay! Thanks!
Yay! Okay, perfect. All right, let's say bye, I guess. Bye!
Bye!
See you next time.